Both Activision-Blizzard and Riot Games this past day have been making their statements around the murder of George Floyd. In the wake of all of that, let's not forget the larger movement, the larger portion of this as well. But yes, a side talking point is the companies out there, as we see many esports organizations and gaming companies and publishers and more, so on and so forth by the day now, making their stance to fight for equality of all human beings in the wake of a sheer tragedy, right? We have seen a number of riots and protests also break out because of this. The world right now, especially here in America, seems to be at a breaking point. It's very, very serious. Let's not distract ourselves too much from the main overall issue. I do think Slasher and many others brought to light a great point, though, with some of these companies that we always knew was going to be very controversial if they made any kind of statement or if they did not make any kind of statement. Yes, that being Activision-Blizzard alongside Riot Games, both of which in the past year and even further back have been involved in some, I would say, key mistakes, some huge mistakes, and some big controversy when it comes time for fighting for those who are also standing for equality of all. And especially when it comes to Activision-Blizzard, I will admit it, guys, when it comes time for the Blizzard side of things, it's pretty hard to disagree with Slasher's argument about all of a sudden they make their stance for George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and in their post, it's I don't know who worded this one, but it's a curious one. As they literally said, "Today and always, we support all those who stand against racism and inequality." The fact that they also said "today and always," when literally last year they were involved in one of the biggest controversies, that being the shutting down of Blitzchung, who tried to stand up for liberate or free Hong Kong and stand up for those protests and in some sense argue for equality as well, and of course basic human rights, and they shut him down time and time again. Even when they had second and third chances to try and make it correct, they still shut down someone who is in a sense also fighting for equality. And then of course now they make this statement revolving around a big tragedy and say they are always going to stand for those who fight against inequality. It's a blatant lie. I will say this as well, for all of you defenders out there of both these big companies, yeah, you have a right to defend them, because hopefully when they make these statements, we can't change the past, but hopefully they can correct themselves and learn for the future, and hopefully they will stand by these words they are now posting. I can hope that at the very least, but you guys can hopefully also understand why it seems a bit disingenuous when these big companies are making these statements when in recent times they were doing things that clearly don't operate in the same sense that their statements are now saying. And although Riot Games' circumstance is a bit different when it comes time for Blizzard, Blizzard has not had a huge sexual discrimination lawsuit in the past year come to some sort of close against several women and others inside the company. And then you could say vice versa, Riot Games has never publicly shut down a player or a team that we know about who is trying to express, their human rights. So both companies certainly have not done maybe what the other has done in a polarizing sense, but they both have made huge mistakes. When it comes time for calling out Riot Games, it does also seem very disingenuous to say you stand for equality, you stand for Black Lives Matter, but what about when it comes time for women? Do women's lives matter? Because in the past year, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, just paint the facts out there, in the last year, one of the largest sexual discrimination cases and lawsuits coming to a close, at least 2 women, now other sources saying that every woman inside Riot Games will be paid out some sort of sum because of the mistreatment they have undergone inside that company. By the way, a company who never even fully fired at least one of the culprits of this, which involves something we've talked about here on this channel, that being potentially farting on employees, humping employees, and much more when it comes time for the degradation of women inside the company. So at the very least, you guys can probably understand when it comes time for recent events of Activision, Blizzard, and Riot Games, who clearly have not stood for equality of all, now for them to make these statements during the wake of a very much talked about moment, it does, at the very least, sound disingenuous. Like I said before, though, we can only hope. They cannot change what they have done before. They can change what they do in the future, and I hope they stand by these statements, because now more than ever, these statements are out there forever. If they ever back down and don't live up to these statements, yeah, me and others are going to talk about that. So that is both sides of the picture, guys. Yes, Riot Games, Activision Blizzard have made very different mistakes, are being called out for very different things. But when you make these kind of controversial statements, especially during a time like now, you're going to be called out for it. And I think more so, at least in my opinion, Blizzard's statement really has rubbed me the wrong way. But again, I hope they learn for this in the future. I hope they do better in the future, and we can hopefully eventually move on from these terrible, terrible moments, including the one that is going on right now, a gigantic movement for Black Lives Matter and other things that gaming, esports, and other key figures out there, and a lot of people in general, are fighting for. So obviously a very sensitive topic, guys. Sorry for anyone out there that I am offending by talking about this, but I felt the need to at least give my 2 cents. Until next time, I hope you guys all enjoy, though. Drink your water, drink your coffee. I'll be back here all day long with other esports and gaming news. Until then, take care. I'll see you guys back here sometime soon.